This is Steve Zeltzer with Workweek Radio, and recently SEIU 1021, which represents over 50,000 workers in Northern California, had an election for new leadership. And there were concerns among some of the SEIU members about the process of the election and whether or not democratic structures were followed. And one of the individuals who was involved in the election and running for office is Brenda Barros. She is the chapter president of SIU General Hospital, 1021 General Hospital chapter, and also San Francisco COPE co-chair. And she's with us and we'll be talking about her concerns and issues. So welcome to Workweek Radio, Brenda.
Hi, thank you. What I'd like to talk about is the fundamental unfairness it is to our members. So it's not about, although I ran for office and although others ran for office, some people from our slate won, some people lost. But that's beyond that. There was a fiasco with computers. We were there over 30 hours to count. Out of 54,000 members, only 3,400. They had thousands probably of votes that never got counted at all. They found excuses not to accept them. So my feeling is that there was no education of the membership that the election was coming. It was like a little secret. Nobody hardly knew about it. Unless you knew somebody who was running, who came up to you to campaign, most members didn't even know it was happening. And a lot of members, I'm still running into members as of even yesterday, which is after we had the election, that people still, they didn't know it, that we were having an election. And these are dues-paying members. Dues-paying members, didn't get their ballots in the mail. So it's just too much stuff. So, my feeling is throw it all out. Let's start again, do it the right way, notify people in advance, make sure all the members know that the election is happening, make sure that there are mechanisms which are easier for people to campaign to people, right? Because some people got lists where they call people, some people didn't, to remind their members to vote. So it was just too many things that, unless you were in the know or unless you were connected, there are a lot of things that you could have done, but you didn't know you could do them, because when you're running initially for office and you haven't done that before, things get slipped. But the main thing for me is every member's vote didn't get counted.
Now, SEIU 1021 is, as I said, covers all of Northern California, the Valley, Central Valley, and Sacramento. And one of the issues that you say that you're concerned about is the vote totals in San Francisco and Solano County. Why don't you talk about that? Because there are 17,000 members of SEIU 1021 in San Francisco. It's the largest group of SEIU 1021 members. And what happened as far as the vote in San Francisco versus Solano County?
The general feeling is because I was there for the vote count and I watched the ones that were being rejected. A majority of the ones that were being rejected are votes that probably would have went the San Francisco way. Now, it's not that everybody in San Francisco voted a certain way. It's just the point that to depress a whole area just because you think it might go a certain way, that's unacceptable.
How did you see that?
We were standing there and you could watch them do that. That was the other part of it, right? People were be able to sit right by it. We have pictures of people sitting right by the ballots. Too many people had access to too much stuff. It was clear that was not a secure process at all.
And what role did Olga Miranda play?
I don't know. She just showed up there and she was watching our process. She's the president of Local 87, which is a clear violation of our policy. There was total votes for 54,000 people or more was 3,500. And out of those 3,500, some of those weren't even counted.
And so how many total votes were there in San Francisco?
We don't even know yet. It wasn't divided that way.
What about Solano County?
It wasn't divided that way. So, but, when you saw the ballots, and you could tell by the area reps, because area reps only can vote for people in their area, it was clear that there were much more votes from Solano County than any other county. And I don't think it's because their people did anything different than anybody else. It's just that that's a stronghold for the current regime, and San Francisco's not.
Now, You said that there wasn't a lot of publicity.
There was no publicity. They didn't even want people to talk about it. Our rep couldn't even go around the hospital and tell people, do her job and make sure that people know about the election. Do her job and encourage people to run for office. Why not encourage? I mean, that to me, that's what reps should be doing. As a matter of fact, people get, they try to discipline people for telling their members stuff. So it's ridiculous. It was really ridiculous. That whole process from beginning to the end was ridiculous how they did it. And now they have an election committee, and so that I'm not going to talk about the election committee because they had to work with what they were given, right? But I think that, there are a lot of things went wrong, and we all know it went wrong. That's why we're going to have a manual count this weekend to look at it. But my feeling is like we're going to manually count the same tainted ballots. Not speaking for anybody else. I'm just speaking for me, Brenda Barrows, who ran for a VP of politics, who was expecting a fair election, who followed the rules. Every rule they gave me, I followed it. And then this happened. So, it's very disheartening. So I think for our membership, I've explained to them some of the things that have happened. And they, to a person, their initial reaction is like, we just need to do this over and just throw that out.
Another candidate in San Francisco is running the election, is here with us, and why don't you introduce yourself?
John Wadsworth. I'm with the SEIU at the SFGH San Francisco General Hospital Chapter, Vice President. And yes, I was a candidate running for San Francisco area rep in San Francisco. And exactly what Ms. Barrows is speaking on. All of us witnessed the same fiasco that took place down at 100 Oak, in Oakland. To summarize the events that took place down there, these ballots were picked up at 8 o'clock in the morning. They were opened up and placed in a holding area to be scanned through software that was designed and made specifically for this election alone. No other election, just for this election. I was told that the software was not tested prior to its use. When they finally finished opening the envelopes, stacked them up, and started scanning them, within, I'd say, a relatively short amount of time, I'd say within an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 scanners went down, so only 1 scanner was going to be in use. 3 laptops were not going to be used, only 1. At that time, somebody spoke up and said, well, let's come back the next day at 9 o'clock. No, that's unacceptable. Who's going to, what are we going to do with these ballots? How do we make sure that, everything is as it should be, above reproach? So instead, under Brenda's direction, just get it done. Kind of through that process, they began scanning. That process took 13 hours. 13 more hours to scan these ballots. Once the ballots were in, it took another 12 hours to tabulate and extract the numbers of totals. The entire process took 37 hours. More than 37 hours is how long it took. It was unacceptable. And just like what Ms. Barrows was saying, this is unfair and really discriminatory towards San Francisco. Because when I was standing there watching this, it was plain to see that the districts of Solano, San Joaquin, Amador, Sacramento, those areas were well represented. The majority of those ballots came from a lot of those areas that supported the other slate. In addition to that, there were 1,300 ballots that were returned because of wrong address. We have our suspicions that a lot of those ballots are San Francisco voters, San Francisco members. San Francisco union members should be uproared right now about what happened down there. It's it is without a doubt that they are underrepresented in this election, and it's true. We had no notice. There were no notices through the hospital to let us know that this was taking place. There was nothing to reach the members to even let them know, what was going on at that time.
And the web.
All the other people that don't have computers. Many of our members do not have computers. So this thing about only sending out mass emails to the people you have email for as communication, only putting things on a website, if people do not have computers, which many of our members don't, they will never hear about any of it unless you have the staff out with flyers making sure that the members know about it, and that did not happen. So all of those members got disenfranchised. They were told that they could not speak on it, period. They could not speak about the election, period.
The one thing that I would like to emphasize, that if this was the will of membership, if this was the absolute will of membership, there is nobody that would not accept the results or the terms. But this is not the case. There was just an enormous amount of things that went wrong that were outside of an acceptable election process. Computers that go down, and there were people in that room, that we didn't even know who they were. We didn't even know who. There was no one was introduced to us. There was a man that was sitting in front of the computer with a hoodie on, with 13 hours. We couldn't even identify him. He sat with a hood on, and when he was awoken, he went to task using computer command script and was programming for 12 hours. That was after the ballots were put into hard drive memory. On top of that, the memory was transferred to 3 different computers. It went from one laptop, and then they said there wasn't enough RAM space and memory because it was 15 gig. They transferred it to another laptop. Then they transferred it to another hard drive, and only then were they able to tabulate the numbers. To make matters even more confusing, managers from global elections, the vice president and the other operations person, when the ballots were put into to this hard space memory, I asked her how long would it be. She said 10 minutes. Then 2 hours later, I asked her, I said, why'd you say 10 minutes? She said, well, I was wrong. Well, why such the disparity? And then they announced that it'd be 3 more hours. It ended up being 13 more hours once the ballots were in. Something is wrong. This needs to be investigated. This should never happen again. There is no way this process is flawed. Even the vice president of the company said that he would never do it this way again, that these ballots would never be made that way with 72 individual ballot races on one card. He said he would never do it again, that it was a mistake, and that there was too many problems with it, and that it would be done electronically.
And so the leadership of the local, Roxanne Sanchez and others, are saying that they had, what was their explanation? Were they questioned about this, and what did they say?
I think that a lot of them were as frustrated as we were. Roxanne, seemed to be frustrated with the process. Larry Bradshaw, I believe he found the process unacceptable. The operations personnel, I thought that I don't know if I should say Seth's name.
Okay, well, what?
Can I say Seth's name?
Seth Shapiro.
Seth Shapiro. I had an opportunity to meet him, and I could visibly see that he found the process unacceptable. This election, global elections persons, they were paid an enormous amount of money. To run this fiasco of a process. They have done this process for SEIU. I think this was the sixth time they said. How could it just go terribly wrong?
Well, are you aware that in other locals like SEIU UHW, which has over 150,000 members, they only had a small percentage of their members voting as well? That this is a common thing, that in big, large merged locals, which is what SEIU 1021 is, the percentage of people voting, of workers voting, is very, very small, and that the elections are being kept a secret. Do you think that that's an organized tactic?
Well, what I do know is that San Francisco members need to speak up, and they need to speak up loud, because they are not being represented. They are not being represented. If those numbers are indicative of the services that are being provided and the communication that's being provided, it is unacceptable. There should be way more members participating in this election, and there were. They're just not being counted. There were 1,300 ballots that came back with the wrong address. Then my feeling is that this first class mail that went out from New York, that the mailings through our posting service coming to San Francisco were delayed in such a way that hundreds and hundreds of our members in San Francisco had not even received their ballot 5 days, 4 days, 3 days before. There are probably 500 to 1,000 ballots sitting down there right now, not accounted for, that won't be counted because the members received them late. We have members that received their ballots after the deadline. A lot of members, just as Ms. Barrows was saying, a lot of members didn't even receive their ballots. I have persons that I personally referred over 100 persons to call the number to get a new ballot. I've had dozens of persons tell me that they got no response. This was not an official ballot process. This was not.
So are you calling for a new election?
Definitely. This needs to be done. This needs to be done, and membership needs to have the opportunity to be part of the process. You're not going to leave San Francisco out. No. We know that very little San Francisco membership in comparison with participation in outreach to the special districts in Solano and Sacramento and San Joaquin and Amador. We know we watched it. We watched the ballots as they passed in front of us, and you could read the districts and where they were coming from. Those ballots were kept in district packets. So we know we can quantify exactly who participated in this ballot. We can be absolute as to who participated in this ballot. According to these numbers, there was 48,000 ballots printed. It says here that on 2/4/16, 46,669 ballots were mailed. In San Francisco, I'm telling you, there's hundreds and hundreds of members that did not even receive their ballots. Some didn't receive them until just a few days prior. No time to look over the literature, work schedules. It says the post office received 3,542 ballots. Ballots used 47,553. Undelivered envelopes returned 1,376. Almost 1,400 ballots. If those ballots are all from San Francisco, this is a completely different result. And what we seen when we were sitting there was a very high turnout and participation from outside districts, meaning that those persons within the union solicited their involvement and depressed San Francisco's involvement. That's why the results are as what they are.